configured my process. Okay, done. No knobs, sorry. So we have to pull other knobs, or in this case, sliders, right? Many small teams or a few large teams, or a few small teams. And low WIP limits, high WIP limits, few workflow states, columns on the board, or many, etc., etc. You know, no iterations, short iterations, long iterations. Experiment and see what happens. So Kanban is more configurable. There's more knobs to pull. For example, this one right here, right? In Scrum, you can't say we're going to do Scrum, but we're not going to do sprints. Well, you can say that, but it's not Scrum. It's better to just say we're not going to do Scrum. But Kanban iterations are optional. So Kanban gives you more options, which is nice, but also a bit of a pain. So you have to think. Scrum gives you a nice default kit, which makes it a good starting point. So I'm going to give you an example of a board that hasn't evolved. Because in most examples when you read about Kanban, and you look at a Kanban board in a book or a presentation, you see a static board. And it's really important to highlight the fact that these boards evolve. They start really simple and evolve. So let's look at a typical example. I've collected a whole bunch of fairly typical patterns for how people solve typical issues on a typical board. And I'll move very fast, just to give you a high-level picture. You can download this Kanban Kickstart example if you want to look at it in more detail. And those of you who managed to get a handout will find it right there. It's a free download from InfoQ, and it's pretty much exactly this. Scrum prescribes roles, Kanban doesn't, right? But that doesn't mean you don't have roles in Kanban, it just means that you get to decide for yourself what they are. So you might start from the Scrum roles if you like them, and if you don't like the Scrum roles, you can use whatever other roles you think you need. So you build up your topology, your structure, and Kanban just simply doesn't tell you what to do in this case. Scrum prescribes time-box iteration. This is an important difference. This is one of the things that cause people to switch. It's an important difference. So here's a Scrum team, and they do sprints, right? Each sprint is 4 different things crammed into one. There's planning going on, right? Prioritization. And there's a commit going on. We think we can finish these 5 things. We now commit to these 5. 2 things going on. At the end, there is something coming out, right? Some kind of release, or at least some kind of demo, review. So input and output going on, commit, and then there's a retrospective going on too, process improvement. All these things are crammed into the same cycle, do it over and over again. Very nice and simple, right? Good starting point, but not always appropriate. So if this feels contrived, you find yourself starting to break these rules anyway, then you might move towards Kanban. You might put a Kanban tinge on your Scrum process, a flavor. Kanban Team 1 actually might decide to do exactly this, but let's say Kanban Team 2 wants to do it differently. They say we do a retrospective every 4 weeks. It's always good to take a step back, no matter what process you use. Take a step back sometimes and look at the big picture, look for patterns and improvements, right? So they do that every 4 weeks. Planning is done every 2nd week. And they don't commit. They just look at what goes next on this column, right? They don't worry about how many things they can finish in 2 weeks. Right? Release is done every week. Every Friday we take whatever is done, we release it. So they split these cadences into different cadences. Now, you don't need necessarily cadences for everything. So in this case, Kanban Team 3 says, well, we like a retrospective cadence of 4 weeks. They do that. But planning is on demand. Right? The development team triggers a planning session when they're starting to run out of stuff to do. They go get the product owner, customer. The customer or product owner triggers a planning meeting when priorities change, for example. So, planning is on demand. It may vary when it's done. And release is on demand. We release when we have stuff to release. Or stuff that is worth releasing. So choose your flavor. Right? Once again, Kanban gives you more options. That also means more stuff to think about. Scrum backlog items must fit in a sprint. This causes pain. It's hard. Sometimes it's a good type of pain. Breaking things into pieces is good. But it can sometimes feel a bit contrived. Why does it have to fit into here? Why can't this thing leak over to there? Why is that bad? So if you don't like this, if it feels like too much pain, you might do Kanban, which allows long-running tasks. So we might, on the same board, combine something here, which takes 3 hours, and this one here takes a week or 2. Right? You can live on the same board. Maybe a different swim lanes. So the limit is here. Right? So if you have too many long-running tasks, the log are persistent anyways. You're still motivated to break things down. But it's not quite as forced. So in summary, Scrum does limit work in progress indirectly through velocity. You know, we've measured our velocities normally 20 to 30, so that's our limit. We don't bring in more than 20 or 30. So it's a limit in terms of time per sprint. In Kanban, it's not a unit per time, it's more per column. Typically per column, right? But some put limit on a per board level, etc. So be imaginative there. Find some way to limit your work in progress. This is a common way, but it's not the only way. Now, Scrum discourages change in iteration. So here's the Scrum team, and there's a sprint, and the product owner says, I want E. So the default response in Scrum is, we'd love to give you E, but right now we've committed to A, B, C, D, and we were focused on that. So next sprint time meeting, just put that right at the top of the list, and we'll get right to it. Right? And the Kanban team, I'm saying default response because I mean you have to use common sense, there's always going to be exceptions. But this is the default response in Scrum. Default response in Kanban is more like, well, we'd be happy to do it anytime, just put it right here. But oops, there's a limit of 2, so you better take something else out in that case. Or wait until something drops off there, so that can drop into there, and now you have to right? So it's the equivalent, it's the complicated way of saying, wait till we have time. And of course, that means you have to decide, right? Scrum once again gives you default rules. You don't need to really make them up. And they're pretty good for most contexts. Kanban doesn't give you rules, so you have to decide something yourself, and it's a good idea to write them down. And why do we write it down? We also criticize them and change them. Let them evolve. So we don't write down the rules to make them permanent. In fact, quite the opposite. It's the rules that aren't written down that tend to be permanent. People don't question them. So, next difference. Scrum is reset between each iteration. There's a start, stop, cycle sprint. So beginning of sprint, mid sprint, and